Hey, we're
Hi.
live.
Hi, Mike Perry from Fidelity Title.
So great to see you, Robbyn Battles.
It's amazing to see you. So here are our ground rules for this interview. We can't talk like we've been best buddies for like a bazillion years.
Okay,
You-
I'll try to behave myself.
Well, I didn't say that. So let's dive in. Let's dive in right now. Here's what I want to know. I want to know how long you've been doing title and what you love so much. Like what inspires you every day to get up in the morning and go do title?
That's a great story. I went to Vassar College and studied psychology and behavioral modification and music composition. And when I first got to LA in 1980, I was thinking, what do I want to do for a career? And I fell into the lending thing. Hey, go around to real estate offices and sell loans. Prime rate was 22%. We were selling loans at 22%. And that's if you put 5 points up front. It was really frustrating. And so I got a job at O'Melveny and Myers, a law firm downtown LA. And I was, I guess I'd call it babysitting attorneys. I was a upper management, managing several departments. And I was having fun there. But my roommate was a title rep, and he was also a Vassar grad. And one day he left his paycheck on the counter in the kitchen, and I saw how much he made. And I said, oh my goodness, you're home by 4 o'clock and you work Marina Del Rey area. He says, well, my boss will interview in a heartbeat. And, that was really a neat thing, because I went to the interview and he said, well, the only area we have open now is the foothills, my favorite area. As you can see by the mountains behind me, it is the beautiful spot to be. So that's how I tripped into title. That was in 1986. So I have been doing this for 33 years, and I was a lender before the law firm. And now I kind of liken it to the law firm. Instead of babysitting attorneys, I babysit agents and escrow people and lenders. And you know what? They're so much more fun. Their stories are so much more exciting than the attorney stories. So that's why I love it.
I'm not making any comment about babysitting agents, babysitting escrow, because we're all brilliant, and
Oh,
never
yeah.
and never, ever, ever have a title emergency, ever, ever, ever.
Well, you're a rare exception. And when I say babysitting, I look at it as a privilege to be able to help people when they have these like deep down dark questions that take a lot of effort to figure out what's the solution. I actually look forward to it. What makes my job even more interesting is every day it's a different thing. I may have settled, 10 different things in my past that I think, I hope this comes up again because now I know how to solve it. But it seems like every day it's something different, and it makes it exciting. It's never the same thing.
So let me ask you this. So most people don't know what a title officer really does. So if I was Jane Doe and didn't know anything about, because I know what you do, but for those that don't, if you could succinctly explain what a title rep does.
That's really interesting. We're busy before the agents get a listing appointment. We're helping them with the research they need to go to the appointment and actually know everything they need to know to take a listing. Does the owner actually own the property? Do they own more than it's worth? The kind of questions. Is there any kind of legal hassles with this property? There could be things like, oh, they have two lots and they want to sell on them separately. Well, it might be a covenant. There might be a covenant that says you can't sell them separately. So what we do is we check out before the agent takes the listing. We help them with the research. And then when they open escrow, we help, facilitate whatever questions come up, like, why do you guys need a copy of our trust? We're still living. Different things like that. And then at the end, when it comes to the closing time, we're busy again working on the closings as far as like getting the deal recorded in time and making sure the money's in, all that's happening, and that everybody at the end of the escrow is happy with the agents and the escrow company that we're working with.
So tell me, if you had to pick three things, if you were to take listing agents and agents out of the equation, and I'm just a homeowner, and I put my property in a trust, I've maybe deeded it to somebody, I've maybe given some land to somebody. what's the right way for a homeowner to do things? Like when you get a file, what's something that's cringeworthy where you wish people wouldn't do what they do?
You just said a great question. Now, what I run into a lot is people who did deeds. I added my daughter to title 10 years ago, and then I got a deed where she deeded it back to me. And then they wonder why, when they're selling now, years later, why do we want the daughter to sign an affidavit of an uninsured deed? You see those commercials on Title Lock. My house got stolen because somebody signed my deed and I didn't know it, and they recorded it and they sold my property. Well, that doesn't happen if they sell it and the buyer gets title insurance, because we will question all the deeds that were done outside of the original purchase that were recorded after the person's entitled, but without going through escrow and title as getting insurance again. So we'll see any deeds like that, and those are called uninsured deeds. And we'll say, oh, we want that person who deeded back in 1992 to sign an affidavit that says, I was conscious of what I was doing. I wanted to do the deed. I didn't have a gun to my head. I wasn't under stress or pressure or methamphetamine or whatever the excuses are. They knew what they were doing. And once we get that, we're clearing title. If we didn't get that, that's how these deeds slip through, like you hear on the title lock commercials. I don't know whether that's a good investment to do the title lock. People ask me all the time. I think, when somebody records a deed on your property, they send you a copy of it, a fraud notification. So you are aware if somebody does something, they do send it to the mailing address or the last mailing address to the owner. If they're doing it right, anytime you're going to get deed of property to somebody and you're never going to see them again, or you may not see them again, a distant relative or somebody you worked with. Because if you're going to hold the property for 10, 20 years and you can't find that person, that could be a problem to clear title. So that's a big pet peeve right there.
So is there something so let's say that I own this property and I want to deed it to my daughter. Can I just reach out to you and say, hey, can I insure this deed so that I don't have to go get an affidavit later on?
Well, with a family member, it's a little bit different because you should be able to find your family member. So that would be a problem. But say you wanted to deed it to your friend, right?
Mhm.
Yes, I would definitely have it done through an escrow and a title company. If it's a good friend and you think you'll be able to find him later on if you need something else, that might be different. One thing I would suggest, if you're going to do a deed outside escrow and title, you can go to the document center, one of those places. Make them give you the affidavit of an insured deed form at the time you do the deed. Okay? Then you won't have to look for it later. They have to have two separate notaries. It can't be the same notary that notarizes the deed that does the uninsured affidavit. Obvious reasons. If somebody's going to forge a deed, they can forge it in front of the same notary, an affidavit. And then the other thing I would suggest to get is a statement of information from that person in case you can't find them, in case there's liens or judgments that were under their names at the time they were on title or not. That's how we clear them. So those two things go along with the deed, and then you'd be okay, a little bit better off anyway.
Why? Because a lot of people put their properties in trust now.
Yes.
Why is it that title wants to see a copy of the trust?
If the trustees, like if it were, Mike and Susie as trustees of the Mike and Susie Trust, we don't require a copy of the trust. We give you a trust certification form, which is on the back of the prelim. It's another form to fill out. It just says, yes, we are the trustees. The trust is still in existence and it hasn't been amended, or if it has, it's been amended this way. And then we can get by with just that. But whenever we have a deceased trustee, so it's Mike and Susie, and Mike is no longer around and Susie's no longer around, we have to have a copy of the trust. Because if Ginger says, oh, they were my parents and I'm the successor and I know it and all this stuff, well, we need to verify, because the property is vested in the trust. We need a copy of that trust just to see who are the successors.
So what does Mike Perry do for fun?
Well, I have to say a lot of it's been taken away with this COVID, because like you, where I'd see you 4 times a week at some community event. I love being involved with our community and knowing what's going on and everything, and like what's going to be built there and what's going to be happening there. And I find you one of the greatest sources of what's going on in the foothills. Robbyn knows. So that's one thing. And then having my band, the Title Wave, which is funny because we name it after the title company, playing in the parades and the fireworks shows and the different places we play. That was always kind of my stress relief.
That's good. Is title a stressful business?
You bet. The reason it's stressful is most of the time you get a problem, you have 10 seconds to solve it. Every time the phone rings, it could be, Mike, we can't close this deal unless you guys find this document from 1937. Oh, yeah. That's the stressful part of it. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's like cataclysmic if you don't get it done right now. It's not like you can sit on it.
So you've done this for 33 years. So if you weren't doing title and now you've got another 33 years on your hand, which I'm sure you do, what would you do if you weren't doing title?
I have to say I'd get my law degree.
Really? Seriously?
Yes.
That's cool. So what kind of law?
Oh, estate planning for sure. Estate, trust, wills, probate, because I see a big need for that. I wouldn't want to get involved with the litigation between people fighting over property lines and whose fence is on what property, which is a lot what title has to deal with.
I got a question. You just made me think of something. So what is it because I see this a lot and I hear about this a lot. What can people do to stay out of probate? Because and then to follow up with that, what do people need to understand about probate and what makes it so bad?
Well, probate's always very expensive and time consuming. So when you inherit a property and it's not in a vehicle that allows the transfer to be automatic, you could be waiting 8 months to sell a property and have to pay all the holding costs of keeping, especially if you're not living there. There's so many ways to avoid probate. One of them is kind of disappeared. It expired. It was a great idea. It was deed upon death declaration, where you could put somebody, if I die, I want so-and-so to get my property. But those were questionable with title companies, and they weren't. The problem was if you had, say you were married or something, right? And all of a sudden you do this declaration, I want my share to go to some person that's not your wife.
There's so much wrong there.
Wait a minute, what's the wife going to be? We need the wife to sign off on this too to make sure it's okay. Those kind of things. But of course, the best way to do it is to have a trust, and then all your assets are taken care of, and everybody gets what you want them to get specifically. And the other thing is to have a joint tenancy set up if you're not a married couple. Say you're just two brothers on title or two friends. But joint tenancy means automatic right of survivorship. So if one of them goes, the other one gets it, even if they have family members or something like that who, hey, wait a minute, dad's half went to his partner, not to us. If you have tenants in common, however, upon the demise of one of the tenants, like two guys who own a property together, if one of them passes, heaven forbid, his share does not automatically go to the other one. It goes to whoever his heirs are. Okay. So the best way to prevent probate is to have a trust. And the other way is to have either a joint tenancy. Now, husband and wife is a different thing here in California because community property state. We have a vesting called community property with right of survivorship. So husband and wives, unless they don't want that, then they would do community property without community. If they wanted their former kids from a former marriage to get their half of the property, and maybe not their new spouse. Does that make sense?
When people go to say no one's followed any of your brilliant advice, and now they wind up in probate, because Mike is brilliant. Give me an idea. Say my property sells for 900,000. Give me an idea of what the cost is that the state is going to take because they have to probate that property.
Oh, that's a good one for the attorneys, because it breaks down like the first 100,000 is at 2%. There's a formula that the court figures is what the probate fees are going to be, but suppose the interest of the property is about 500,000. Say you're untitled with your mom and your mom passed away, but it wasn't joint tenants. Okay, then her 500,000 value would have to be probated to you. That runs between probably about $9,000, $10,000. So it's a lot. And it takes
A lot of
time.
money. And yeah, and the timing, because now probate probably now is all backed up
Yes, it is
with
very
COVID.
bad.
And so, and that 9 to 10,000 is before you talk about commissions and attorney's fees and all of, I mean, all of the additional fees, correct?
Right.
Wow.
And now with our new tax law, Prop 19, I'm going to throw another curve at you.
Have they figured it out? That's my question for you. Have they
No, I'm
figured
going to
out
go.
Prop
There's a great webinar coming on again this Thursday with Pasadena Foothill Association of Realtors or Glendale. I can't remember which one, but I've already signed up for it with General Jeffrey Prang.
Right.
And I think they're going to be delaying it for a couple of years. But one of the neat caveat is that if you were over 55 and you wanted to transfer your low tax rate for a property you've owned for a long time to a new property, now you don't have to stay below what you sell for. You can buy at any price, and you can take it to any county in California, and you can do it 3 times. Those were all very limited with the Prop 6090. But the other half of that law changed to where when you want to donate your property to your kids or add your kids to title, if they
Right.
don't live at the property when you deed them on or move in shortly after, then the property gets reassessed for whatever percentage of the value that they take. So if they get 50% of the value, 50% is going to go to full pop assessed value, which is going to raise your property taxes quite a bit.
Have they figured out the part of Prop 19? So let's say I sell my house for 900,000 and I go buy a house for 1.2. Have they figured out how the calculation, or is that where because the calculation for that difference? Because it used to be you had to buy for $1 less, and then you could take that tax with you. Have they figured out how they're going to tax that additional monies yet?
It's very simple. Yes,
Okay.
whatever the purchase price is of the new property, or actually, let's say you sell a property for 500,000 and you want to buy one for 600,000, right? It used to be you couldn't buy one for higher than what you sold for, or it didn't work at all. Well,
Correct.
now it doesn't work. So now you would keep the same tax bill you had on your former home for the up to the 500,000 of the assessed value. The next 100,000 would be assessed at full pop, but
Oh,
it's a
okay.
lot less than if you had your whole
Oh,
property.
yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. So, okay, that's very, very helpful. Okay, so is there anything I didn't ask you about title that we should know? Is there something about Mike Perry that we should know? Because, you're local, we see you everywhere. You're not allowed in our offices anymore. Well, maybe someday you'll be allowed back in. But is there something that people don't know? If somebody wanted to get into title, what would you say is the most interesting thing for them to get into title? Why would they want to do it?
Well, title's one of those things that changes. The laws change all the time, so you're always going to be getting new information, and there'll always be new ways to solve old problems when old ways to solve problems go away, and that's what keeps it kind of interesting and fun. And then in the days when there wasn't COVID, it was really an enjoyable job to see the houses and look for, I'd go to open houses and see the realtors.
Mhm.
And it was such a fun time because a lot of people would be there showing their buyers the property. And when there was stuff like an easement issue or something, an encroachment that I would see at the property, I could say, whoa, we got an issue right here where looks like that guy's garage is 10 feet into your property. We can deal with it up front and get this solved so that if we get an escrow, we won't have to delay, and getting people to talk. Now, I'll tell you one more thing that is very important. And I love people like Robbyn, you always do this, is look at the maps when you're buying a property or selling. When the preliminary title report comes out, if it shows one parcel and there's 2, there's going to be a problem if you don't go, wait a minute, he owns another property, bought it separately on another deed, and it's on a different lot and tract. He wants to sell that too. It's very important because if we close the escrow, only selling the one property, the seller still has the other one and is on title. So then we have to do like some, another deed from him, and then kind of confuses what the assessor is going to assess it at full pop. But it's something solvable. It's just, if it goes on for a period of time, sometimes you can't find that seller. The other thing is sometimes the seller will have 4 properties and they're only selling one because they're going to develop 3 new houses. And we run into that a lot, right? And when that happens, you want to make sure we don't sell all 4 lots to that first buyer who's only buying the first one. So looking at a map is really important. And I always tell everybody, and this is why I call it babysitting, because I love this stuff. Mike, is he buying what? Is he getting what I'm thinking is? He thinks his lot's 20,000 feet. It only shows 5,000. And then I'll look at it and I'll say, oh, because he owns 4 more parcels. And, I call it babysitting, but it's just basically providing information that helps you guys do your job.
I think we call it looking out for everyone's best interest.
Yeah.
Babysitting. I mean, I really, I think you do. And I think one thing that's so cool about title is, especially with you, is that if I've got a question or I see something that looks kind of like, am I going to be able to do it this way? It's like you can anticipate the problems.
Yes.
And you anticipate the problems so that when we get to that point where we're trying to get something done for a client, we can get it done easily and smoothly, and hopefully without a lot of crying.
That's true.
There's no crying in title, right?
No, and I know a lot of times when you guys ask me, is there anything I should be afraid of on this report? You don't really want me to say, well, item 4 is kind of spooky.
Yeah.
But so I have to do that in a way, present it that, it's factual. Is
Yeah.
it scary? I don't know. It's your interpretation of what is scary.
Right.
I wouldn't fear it, and then, like when CC&Rs say, oh, Mike, there's 230 pages of these conditions, restrictions, and covenants that affect this condo. Do I have to read that? It might be a good idea, because if you bought that condo thinking you wanted to paint that door red, and in the CC&Rs it says no red doors, and you just bought, you can't have your red door.
And for those people that don't know what CC&Rs are,
Conditions,
explain.
restrictions. Oh, when people, new tracks make, to keep the conformity and keep the values up, they don't want people putting up hodgepodge different kinds of homes. So sometimes they'll create a covenants, conditions, and restrictions so that when the track gets developed, everybody's kind of in the same conformity.
Well, and the other thing that I think that we did on one not too long ago is you can have covenants that restrict a single family property.
Oh, yes.
And I think that we run into that a lot, especially some properties that haven't been sold for a very long time. And for instance, I think one we did recently, there was a covenant that said it could not be subdivided.
Right.
And
sometimes you cannot add a second story, because maybe there was a lawsuit at one time where people were afraid their view was going to get blocked. So they went to court, and they had the people that own the house that were going to do the second story had to succumb to a court order that says no second stories can be added. Okay, so that would be recorded against the property, and any buyer would see, oh, I can't add a second story to my house. Well, at least if they know that up front, they're not going to add a second story. We're good to go. If they're buying it to add a second story, that's the reason they're buying it, you got a problem.
Got to read all of that stuff.
That's
Mike Perry, I need to go. You need to go.
Okay.
We have lots to chat about, but I think this is great. It's like Title 101. Get to meet Mike Perry, your neighborhood title rep. How do you like that? Is that good?
I love it. Your friendly neighborhood title rep of the foothills.
Our friendly neighborhood title rep. Mike Perry, go have a great day. I will be in touch soon.
Sorry about the babysitting line, but it was just one of my.
I think it's absolutely fine. I'll just be sure to cry next time I see you. Thanks, Mike Perry. You're the best.
Thank you, Robbyn.
See ya.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
See ya.